We're here with Ryan Spoon, Senior Vice President for Digital Product Management. Ryan, before we start, just kind of give us your background. You were a swimmer at Duke, so are you a Duke guy? You're the unofficial school of ESPN, or the official school of ESPN, I suppose?
That would be UNC.
I don't know. I don't think so.
Background is, yes, grew up on the East Coast, swam at Duke. While there, I actually started a company called Be Recruited, which kind of like Match.com, which connects people on dates. This connected high school athletes and college coaches recruiting platform. And kind of through the process of me ending up and being recruited into Duke, created this kind of platform and product, which ended up being a nice little business. Mm-hmm. After school, I went out to San Jose, California, joined eBay. Was there for about 5 years. At night, did Be Recruited, which ended up being acquired. I ended up leaving eBay and did very, very early stage venture capital, so investing in tech companies. Everything from e-commerce to social media to a little bit of digital media, etc. And found my way back to Bristol.
How did you get to Bristol?
Like a lot of career pathing, very random, in a bunch of interesting ways. The folks who came in to run Be Recruited, as we sold a stake in it and stopped, I had one partner, the two of us stopped operating it. He was at Microsoft, I was at eBay. I moved on to the board. Two folks from ESPN actually came over to run it. Got to know a couple people. John Kozner, through various circumstances, we ended up connecting and meeting. We flirted for 6 months or whatever the period was, and ended up literally 4 years ago this week joining.
And so how would you describe your job here at ESPN? What do you do?
So there's three primary functions. It's all around digital. The first is product management. So the definition and the specification of what the products digitally, what the screens look like and feel like, and what each, how they interact, how they integrate with the technology and the studios and all that kind of stuff. That's across ESPN.com, all of our mobile apps, mobile applications, fantasy sports, our authenticated TV viewing with Watch ESPN, our video clipping, anything digital. 1/3 of the team, or 1/3 of kind of the focus, is creating the product specs. The other section is the design of it, so there's a design team. Everything from how each pixel looks and animates and moves, to the aesthetic and making sure that works with the aesthetic that the great folks in television work with, and so forth. And then there's another team focused on the content programming of those screens. So what content should appear on the homepage. Not necessarily the creation of writing it. We've got great editors and folks who do that, but what are users engaging with? If I'm a Patriots fan and you are a Jets fan, should we be seeing different things? Are we getting different alerts to our phone? And we call that the audience development group, but it's the placing and distribution of content is a really basic way to think about it.
So you're able to, in that way, you're able to custom what people, how important is it to kind of customize what, as you said, what someone in New England wants compared to someone in Champaign, Illinois, or something like that, where this class is taking place? Maybe they're not interested in the Patriots, but they're interested in the Bears or the Cubs.
So I think it's critical. Figuring out what the right mix is the challenge. We still have a important duty of making sure that the most important stuff gets seen. And there are times where if we only listen to the triggers you told us about yourself, you wouldn't see some of the most important stuff. And I think that's really important. On the flip side, the beautiful part about sports is that every person who visits the site will go, hey, I like the Red Sox. And that's just very different and enviable if you were at any other company, where outside of election season, that's a very different concept. And it also expires. You might be interested in the top of that expires. That's not true of a Patriots fan. So when we get that explicit confirmation that you like the Jets, I like the Patriots, we then can do a lot with it. We can trigger, we'll send 5 billion alerts via the mobile phone this month.
5 billion.
Yeah. We send billions of alerts. And I say this all the time. We've never been told we send too many alerts if the content's relevant to you. You can't overserve a fan. Now you can overserve someone when it is generic information. So that's why the personalization side is so important.
So talk about this this migration or this emphasis from, 8 to 10 years ago, everything was a laptop or desktop computer. The phone really was kind of still, the flip phone or whatever. And this idea of now, I think more than half of your content is consumed over a phone.
70% of our users last month, I think, came via,
70%.
Just under, but roughly 70% were mobile. Not far from that, exclusively use us via mobile. If you look at Facebook, who had fantastic earnings yesterday, they did, I believe, 85% of their users use them via mobile, and 60%.
So how has that changed the dynamic for you guys? And again, this is this is under a relatively short period of time, as far as how you have to present your content, because it's different on a phone, obviously, than on a laptop.
And it's much harder on a phone. If you just think about how you would build a house, if you have to fit all the things into one room versus 5 rooms, the real estate makes that much more challenging. The web world changes, the desktop or the laptop, but it doesn't. There's history to it, and that's not true in the mobile world. This stuff has moved so fast and changes all the time. There's a bunch of dynamics you got to figure out how to fit in a 5-inch screen versus a 1,500 pixel screen. How do you make great ads? How do you create a great navigation? Navigation's probably the hardest piece to figure out. Historically, you had, here's NFL, NBA, etc.
Right.
You could just litter a bunch of different posts.
And you only can get so much on a page.
Now, the other piece is that now user attention is just very different. It's fleeting in some ways. It comes in and out. It can come from a Google search, from a Facebook search, from an alert, from an email link, from an app home screen. It's checking, and the inclination is very much, okay, press the home button, go to the next thing, or go press back and go back to Google, back to Facebook. How do you get them to stay? And in a mobile world, there's a lot of things that are valuable that didn't exist before. Talked about alerts, location. I can tell you right here what teams you should be thinking about, calendar, all sorts of interesting things. But you also live in a world that is much more competitive.
Right.
And attention spans are different.
Well, that's like I always called it short attention span theater. I mean, what do you figure an attention span, what kind of is for someone who's just kind of, sitting at the bus stop waiting, for the bus to come and...
So that is probably limited. However, there are other attention spans which are much longer, where, on a mobile phone we would see, I think the average session for watching the NBA playoffs on your mobile phone,
right,
streaming it live in the app, was well over 20 minutes.
Wow.
Now that you come in a bus stop or you get an alert
right.
from Facebook and you see I shared something, you click it, likely that's looking more like a one-page visit than a...
Okay, but 20 minutes for an NBA game, that's...
So it really, one of the beautiful parts about sports and ESPN is it's incredibly calendared. And the calendar both matches season, day of week, time of day, etc. So I can tell you, and I can assume and understand user patterns based on that. Fantasy is a really good example. Sunday, the average session will be, or the average user will spend over 100 minutes with us on Sunday. So it's significant.
Okay, so that's an hour and 40 minutes. I mean, that's an amazing amount of time.
We don't have any NFL games.
Right.
It's pretty staggering. On Monday, and that's watching and actively managing a roster and doing fantasy cast. On Monday, the user behavior is totally different. On Tuesday, it's setting waivers. On Wednesday, it's setting your team. On Thursday, it's reading Matthew Berry. And so there's a calendar and a cadence to this stuff that we can start to adjust the experience, the notifications, the content, etc.
Social media, what's your responsibilities in that regard as far as, you know, getting the word out and trying to connect with people on?
Yep.
And,
so part of the, you talked to Rob King yesterday.
right.
He has a big focusing group with it. The audience development team also manages the our @ESPN handles and some others for Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, our Snapchat daily channel, etc. It's significant, and each universe and platform is increasingly different and requires different content and different.
So give me an example. What would you do for Twitter compared to like an Instagram or something like that?
Yep. So if you think about Snapchat, Facebook, and Twitter, and the mechanisms and the mechanics of each are now so different, even though they effectively solve a lot of the same user wants. They do it differently. So Twitter is very much a linear feed. Not the right term for in the TV world, but in this case, it is linear, driven down by time.
Right.
If I log in at the bus stop or I'm at Starbucks, there's no, you see what you see and you scroll backwards. You don't see necessarily what happened 12 hours ago. That also means there's no penalty or cost to oversharing. Now, you can overshare to the point where you're annoying, that's a separate piece. But that means that on Twitter, it is our job in a linear world to share information as it is material and important at a greater frequency. On Facebook, you don't have that luxury because there's an algorithm that sits behind it and says, you know what, hypothetically, you're going to share 20 things today. There's no way you, the user, are going to see 20 things from us. So you have to be a little more thoughtful. The speed at which it gets out, because it's not in that sequential mechanism, we don't control that, means maybe there's different types of content. This is limited to 140 characters, this might be more visual, more video, etc. And then Snapchat's totally different, where we publish a daily, if you will, each morning, and it is 20 or so pieces of stuff that look and feel very different, and you can consume it anytime over the next 24 hours, and then poof, it's gone. If you were to take the same posting frequency or content type or visuals, and you shared them across each, they would do well on none. You need to really do it individually for each.
So we've talked now about all these different applications and the Watch ESPN, which has become a huge, thing for ESPN, right? I mean, as far as people consuming it on, watching SportsCenter on their phone, or watching it on demand, and the idea of, I mean, that's a game changer, right? I mean, it has been for the company, hasn't it? As far as
I hope so.
You hope so, right?
No, the numbers are great.
The numbers are great because people are able to watch when they want to watch. They can, if they miss a story, if Jeremy Schaap has a great story on it from the Olympics or something like that, they can. You don't necessarily have to be in front of your television set. That used to be if you didn't see it, if you weren't sitting there watching it, you missed it. Now you can watch it on demand. I mean, so it's opened up a lot of different horizons for ESPN.
And we've done a good job of better integrating all of our tools. So if you just think about the life cycle, take for instance, take Game 7 of the NBA Finals. After that, it was every Euro match. After that, it was every Wimbledon. We've done baseball games every night this week. But take it as an example, let's just say Game 7 of the NBA Finals. The number one sports app is the ESPN app. And there's a big button at the top of the page with the live score of the Cavs-Warriors game. And with one click from a watch button, you bring up the stream. Let's say you somehow missed that. An alert comes in that says, entering the fourth quarter, this is a tie game for the championship. That alert will deep link immediately into the stream. Or you're in the news feed and you're reading commentary about something totally unrelated to the NBA. There'll be a big button up there, say 15 minutes left in the game, or 12 minutes, whatever it is. we're doing a better job of saying we got the largest audience here. How do we use that to start to funnel traffic in other ways, as obviously makes sense, both from a sports calendar and from a, your preference.
So as we finish up here, the challenge for you, because we've talked about, I joked before you sat down that technology's probably changed in the 10 minutes, 4 times in the 10 minutes that we've been, we were waiting before we do. What is the challenge as far as trying to anticipate, because it is changing so rapidly, as far as trying to anticipate and being ahead of the curve of where this is all going? How does that challenge affect what you do?
So I wouldn't say it's the largest challenge. The biggest challenge, just from a pure functional perspective, is this company creates so much great content every day. I mean, the volume is really unrivaled. How do you make sense of all of that in a digital world where where the user behaviors are different? How do you distribute that out in a way that makes sense and takes advantage of the scale? And does justice to the content? How do you create navigation paradigms that work with that? How do you prioritize? You can't do it all, so how do you prioritize what gets shown and so forth? To me, that's whatever device you're carrying 3 years from now, that's still the same question that's going to exist. On a pure technology basis, there's a couple challenges. One is, yes, it changes all the time. We have a general sense of where we think some of that goes. We also have good relationships and partners to help influence some of that. How do you prioritize work across that, both for things that we think are future and user worthy, but also, we touched 90 million U.S. users last month. For us to move the needle and do something really impactful, it has to both be strategic, but also capable of touching a big audience. So there's always the balance of, is this capable of being really big? And that has to be a filter. And sometimes that is a fun filter, and sometimes it can cause you to think about things maybe in the wrong way. But it's important. If we do something to add a couple 100,000 users, we're probably spending time and energy in things that aren't materially important, unless we think the technology there is capable of being much, much bigger. That's a pretty regular set of conversations and logic that we think about.
Good. Well, thanks for being with. Good stuff. Thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.